check, test, hello, check, check, check.
ये पार्केंस में है ना चलेगा
Test, check.
Hello, hello, check, check, mic test. check, check.
Check, check. Afternoon, guys. We are just starting in 5 minutes. The guests are here. They're just coming up. Yeah.
A very good afternoon, everyone. Thanks a lot for joining us today. We'd request you to stand for the national anthem. Thank you.
जनगण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मागे गाहे तव जय गाथा जनगण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे
Jai Hind. Thank you. Once again, welcome everyone. People in the room and also people who are joining online. Thanks a lot for joining us. We'd like to invite MSR, CEO of T-Hub, onto the stage, and Vani Kola, Managing Director, Kalaari Capital, Sandeep Goel, Managing Director, Moglix, and Prabhdeep Singh, CEO, StanPlus.
So good afternoon, and first of all, thank you for all being here, and a warm welcome to my very distinguished panelists. I don't think any one of them needs an introduction, but for those of you who are not familiar with them, I'll just do a quick, which he's managed, right? We also have Sandeep from Moglix. Moglix, Sandeep was telling me, is the Amazon for industrial supplies. So anything anyone wants from a critical need, I guess particularly during COVID, about ambulance services, just providing high quality end-to-end ambulance services. So thank you for being here. And today we're going to talk about a very interesting theme. All of you have been following the media, this whole thing about funding winter, started by a survey with PwC. Funding has fallen by about 40%. It has come down to, it was about just over 10 billion in Q1, merger and acquisition activity. So for example, Blinkit acquiring, Zomato acquiring Blinkit, and so on. And then many IPOs got delayed. So I guess companies like Kola, PharmEasy put their IPOs on the back burner because of a couple of years, right? And of course, post-COVID, many economies are struggling, particularly some of our neighbors, which were heavily tourism and commodity dependent, etc. Right? So with all of that, right, he talks about, with everyone referring to the GOT narrative of winter. So maybe you can start with Vani, right? So what exactly, when you hear this word funding winter?
I also don't know really what it means. In a very simple way, I would say if you receive funding, then obviously it is spring. If you don't receive funding, then it's winter. So I think this notion also of this winter or spring, but since he asked the question, I suppose it really is to mean that many companies will struggle to receive funding. But that's the point. It could be many, and many companies, though always, even in the best of times, struggle to get funding. Maybe more do now. And the dynamics of what companies get funding might have.
So you're saying that money is still available for good ideas, for good teams, and for good execution. Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah, good. Thank you, Vani. So let me go with
frequently used funding winter. Hyderabad, we don't see so much of winter, so we don't know what sort of preparation we need to take for winter. But I come from Dehradun, which is, we keep looking for buzzwords. The world is about buzzwords. I would say it's just getting a little more attention probably than what it should. Inflation is not new to India. I think right now it's the macro which is playing. Suddenly Europe and US have, that's what you prepare for. I would say it's nothing more than that. The other thing is it's not something that you can react to it as an organization if you've not been operating in a manner that you are ready for winter any day. Suddenly, let's say, doesn't happen in India, but...
Thanks, Sandeep. So I think in some ways you kind of echoed what Vani said in some ways, in the sense that you said, this is just a passing phase. It's like another passing recurring season here compared to, from Prabhdeep is too young to probably answer the 2001 and 8 questions. So that's why I thought I'll start with you.
I think he already told us that he's too young. Work level, and they're not that different. In fact, we sometimes forget that the common sense we use with our personal finances is really the same way you should think about running a company. So you have high working capital loans, you struggle to collect, you have debts that you are not able to service, and new capital that you are not able to raise. Not able to get temporarily debt, right? They said we had never seen that in our entire history, right? So it's always available, maybe at a price, but they just couldn't. Time is the number of people who have seen such cycles, let's say in a New York or a Silicon Valley, from a startup perspective, there is that memory, it's like in a game reserve, the crash happened, right? So I remember that and what it all meant at that time. And 2008, I think the startup India was very small still, right? We know, for example, like a Klarna went from 65 billion to 6.5 billion overnight, right? What is the leadership needed when something like that happens? Smart, or somebody gets going and somebody doesn't, and we have to learn from that.
Okay. So Prabhdeep, as someone who raised funding very recently, right? So obviously seeing, hearing, reading about.
That's a very, very important question, because it is something that has kept me up at night over the last ability to run a company when it's just that the market is so frothy that everyone is rising up, right? So we've raised money recently, and now it is for us as a company to prove that our investors and the world out there is right in funding us, because as much as this is the funding winter, we also have to realize that 1 year ago it was a funding rainfall, right? So if today funding, and I would rather be in this stage than not, but it's very important to be careful not to run out of that money as well, right? Because we don't know how long is this slowdown going to last. And with the money raised, and we've run this company for 6 years now, and we've only had a lot of money to spend for the last 4 months. And that's such an interesting place to be, because for the last 5 years, we've not had the money to execute on a lot of things, and we always blamed capital. And now that we have capital, we've realized, hey, execution is more about just having capital.
It's more than just capital.
It's more than just capital. For someone as young as I am, from their vantage, how do I lead them, right? I've only led a very junior team for last 5 years, and suddenly I have to coach myself externally and through all the internal, the readings, the podcasts, right? In this environment, to be able to manage people is not easy. Everyone is insecure whether the company will run out of money. Everyone is insecure whether this is the right idea to, place their bets on, their career on. So I think good leaders, and I'm learning from the competition, right? If my competition is thinking as much as about their funding as I am, right, then perhaps by thinking less about funding and focusing more on execution, I can have a competitive advantage. So
what are, let's say, maybe 2 or 3 initiatives you've undertaken now, right? Which hopefully you can share, as long as it's not confidential. What are the 2-3 things specifically you've done now to be able to, to manage this?
Come to the top for approval, right? And a lot of, if we can collect faster, Vani mentioned about working capital. I've done 2 MBAs and no one spoke about cash flow. And then we've made sure that the good money has an approval matrix before it gets out. Simple things, you want to recruit a leader, an agency would have charged 30% 6 months ago. They will still charge 30% that unnecessarily.
So you're financing your customer's business.
Yeah. Then wherever costs can be curtailed or postponed, we are doing that.
Okay.
Right? And the last thing is over communicating. We are, from my desk, from our leaders' desk, we are making sure that we tell.
I'm sure there's a bunch of measures you have taken or a set of initiatives you've rolled out, right? Because no one knows how long this could last.
Putting up things. If you're in 1 to 10 phase, you have a lot in your hand to control. And fortunately, we have been in 1 to 10 phase, a scale organization. So it just gives you a lot many more areas to control. How much runway do you have? What's the, your burn on monthly, quarterly basis, and what's the balance that you have in your account? These are the right metrics to measure. And there is a saying, there are in fact 2 sayings I would want to call out. One is, whatever gets, you have to keep a tab on this. What's your burn? What's your customer acquisition cost, lifetime value? What's your EBITDA? Many stories end at ARR or GMV. That's a very, very popular KPI in the VC world. Become very flamboyant at one stage and suddenly look at switching back. That's never sustainable. And that's again the second thing which we practice very, very rigorously. Frugality is a term that we use. One part is having the term, second is And for 1 to 10 organizations, the third thing that we are very carefully looking at is, see, there is always a growth strategy or a, you can say a scale or more consolidation strategy. In growth strategy, you look at starting new business units, opening new geographies and all. A lot of anxiety internally also, I can tell you, even if you're not raising, we don't need money, we are not raising capital. But then you hear from the market that so-and-so has raised 300 million at 3 billion valuation when they were 1 billion about a year ago. Yeah, that's...
Thanks, Sandeep. I think some great points. I just want to summarize a little bit. I want to bring in my perspective. One of the things I was taught many years ago, they didn't teach us this in MBA.
Last topic that you said, right? As early stage founders, there's no bigger or worse feeling than the FOMO you feel every time you open a newspaper and you see someone else getting funded. It's the worst.
And sometimes it's not even true, right? Don't read the news and think it's real, right?
Yeah.
So, because I know companies that raised like 10 million and the reporting says they raised 40 million.
Yeah.
And so...
So I'm going to come to Vani now. So Vani, this constant struggle between growth versus profitability, right? Obviously there are certain points where you want to press the pedal.
You have to ask yourself a set of questions. Do you really have a great product, right? That someone really wants. It could be consumer, business to business. And you may, and here is where, of course, it's like I really in a best-in-class product. Let's assume you're not. It can take time. I built enterprise products when I was an entrepreneur. I remember we spent a whole year building this product, went into the market, nothing to do with funding winter or whatever, went into the market, and as we sat with the customers, I realized we actually had the wrong product, right? It has nothing to do with the engineering design and level of effort that went into coding. Now you have to make a call, and leadership is all about making difficult decisions. I came back and said, we have to change the product direction almost like 70-80%. So only a small amount we can retain. Of course, some of the engineers are upset because from a growth perspective, it's no point trying to also change the product and acquire customers at the same time. That's, as they say, trying to fuel a plane mid-air or whatever metaphor you want to use. So many startups make this mistake. They don't want to acknowledge and take the time. It doesn't matter. Take a step back, 3 months, 6 months, a year. It's not end of the world. I mean, companies like Microsoft are still growing and they are 40-year-old startups, so to speak. Apple, that's okay when you're piloting the product, when you're trying to sort of discover, and maybe for the first year it's okay. For a small amount of burn, it is okay. But if you are willing to give away 100 rupees for the price of 80 rupees, then you can give away a lot of 100 rupees. There is no problem. You can have a lot of growth, right? So that is not the point. The point is, do you have right unit economics? It doesn't mean at a company level you are profitable. You don't have to be for a long time, actually. If you have a great product, customers need it, and you have good unit economics, then grow. Any market doesn't matter. Actually, in these kind of markets is where if you can acquire market share, think of it like we all think of like a new restaurant, right? It's great and you tell 100 friends and you went there, it was great, and after some time, somehow, you say the food is not so good anymore. What does that really mean? They couldn't maintain the same standard, same quality. They couldn't actually scale the operations, right, to maintain the consistent quality. It's the same at any place. Doesn't just have to be a restaurant. Every business also. I think what worked in the beginning is you kind of held everything together, right? Maybe as the CEO, you're involved in every aspect of not 2 stores. Well, by the time you get to 50 stores, everything has changed from those costs, and that business is no longer actually interesting, right? So you have to be able to think about scaling. If you have those 3 things, people who can help scale the business, really good unit economics, really great product, there's no reason for you to hold back growth. You should grow at the best pace that you're capable of growing, right? So, and you will find the capital for such good valuation, because the old school company is probably growing at 10% CAGR or whatever it is, and maybe this company is growing at 200%, and you think that they have the opportunity to do that for the next 5 years, let us say. So obviously it will get a better valuation, you know. So it is also that you can't build companies if there is no growth. If there is no growth, somebody else will, and
You said, right? Okay. Prabhdeep, I'm going to come to you, right? Now and then I'll come back to Sandeep. So, as a CEO's, a founder's job is a lonely, tough job, right? I'm sure you've probably had cost at a very unit level type of thing, which also calls for you to take tough calls. How do you handle them in a way where, whatever culture you're building, right, doesn't get, destroyed in the process?
So your first question is, how has the funding changed me in the most efficient manner to generate the
maximum
most disproportionate amount of returns possible? So what this means is, as Vani said, what the future investor is going to look at is, have we built a good business? And that's going to be defined by, have we grown sustainably? Is the product loved by the customers? Are we allocation? So what this means is that instead of spending perhaps on a large branding work, we are now putting that money in reducing our ETAs. Because we believe what we will do now, we may get engineers cheaper, which was absolutely... So cost rationalization has to happen. Cost cutting has to happen where it is non-strategic. Go back to the core, as was mentioned. But that doesn't mean it has to come at the expense of core business. Core automatically ho jati hai. And as a founder, I think what you get trained for is that you don't need to take a decision when the water's here. And you anticipate and you start designing the organization for that call. Whether it is laying off people, for example. The internet's full of stories where founders waited too long.
Location changed
Yes.
because of this. And what have you done differently?
Yes. My style has changed. It has become more assertive. I have become more goal-oriented. And I have also made, hey, what is the value you're bringing on? And those are the tough conversations that I am training myself to have. And it's an ongoing exercise.
Sure. Sandeep, we can build on what Prabhdeep said. How have you changed as a person?
Yeah.
And,
Day one, I went to drop her to the play school. And the play school had this fencing, wooden fencing, low height, not a very tall fencing. She was continuously crying. She knew that we are going to leave her there. I held her in her decision making takes over at that point of time. And what's your true intent? I think intention, I'm a very, very firm believer in what's your intent when you make a decision. And those of you who believe in Hindu philosophy, mythology, have followed Gita, she hurt herself. My office was about 15 minutes away. She called that I fell and I have hurt myself. She was again crying. I did not even see which call I am on, who is sitting in my room. I just lifted my car keys and left the office that very second. What he also highlighted, that when you are at the top of the ladder, right, there's no one else you are going to blame it on. That's your buck stops at you. So the day buck stops at you, you'll make right decisions. Just keep your intent to just follow at the organization as well.
Thank you for sharing a really personal story. Fascinating, situation, context dependent response and intent. I think 2 great points. Okay, so second is, if there are 2 or 3 key messages you want to share with our young founders here, and we'll just quickly go around.
You have to be bold action, There are many decisions to be made, and it requires a certain inner courage, inner conviction to be able to go about doing that on a day-to-day basis. So do that, act rather than just wait. Whatever that act is, their product, like Slack, okay, was not an instant success. Nobody was, like Notion, nobody was willing to fund them. Said, "Ye kya hai?" Right? So funding is not it's required, but it'll come when it comes. But don't think that that defines your success. You can transcend momentary access or lack of access to funding and work on, what it is. 15 years, if you look at companies listed 15 years back in the top versus today, 90% of the companies won't exist, right? With technology changes, there may be good companies, great companies have to continue to reinvent themselves. So I think there is always opportunity. There is something that is a new opportunity every day. So you will have to kind of figure out, today, what is the universe I can never be?
Funding is not the nirvana. Funding is not the nirvana. Thank you.
Funding is a means to an end. And oftentimes, this newspaper thing that Prab talked about and everything.
I have the last word on this. So let's go with Sandeep.
Last message?
Yeah, the last message. 3 key takeaways which you would like to share with our audience.
It says that an entrepreneur is someone who jumps off the cliff first and then tries to build the glider on the way down. And it says a lot on your way. If you are an entrepreneur, be prepared. You have jumped, you should be scared. You might be running out of money. That's again a very natural feeling. So a lot of these things, in India, who are saying, I am working in XYZ company, but since it's work from home and after 4 o'clock I am free, I have done a startup. It's not going to.
I believe in the India story. Very important. I went abroad to study, got a job there, moved back to do this. But you have to, at the very, very core of your heart, believe in the India story. The consumer sentiment is very, very high, even if investor sentiment is not. All flights are full, all hotels are full. Queue at home, stay on your phone, and products don't get built like this. Like Sandeep mentioned, wo koodna padta hai. You have to take that jump off the cliff. Showing up matters, whether it is in front of your customer's office and waiting for 4 hours. I've done that all my life. Or to your office every day, or in those difficult conversations that you asked me about. Showing up is really important. And third is, you have to be very authentic. And we overestimate how much can we do in a day, and we grossly underestimate how much we get done in a year, right? So that's why my daily checklist is 10 points long, but my yearly checklist is 3, right?
Good point.
So strange. But that means that show up, keep working, keep grinding on a daily basis, and you will be surprised by how much you've built in a year.
Thank you. Great point. Great close to this. We don't have too much time for.
Thank you. This is Ashish, and one question I have is, we have
Okay.
and non-recurring.
Non-recurring
It
revenue.
doesn't repeat every month.
Okay.
It's an annual revenue of 800K.
See, again, it's the question. There is no yes or no answer to should we go for funding now or not. It all depends. It's such a highly contextualized question. If you need money to complete something you're not able to complete, just the glider example, you're flying down, put it from your own pocket, whatever. If you think you're good, you'll be able to build what is needed to launch the product, then just continue. And then raise at the right points. It's a very timing issue. Right, so it's like a cricketer asking me, ki ball is coming, should I hit a 6? I don't know, what's your asking rate? If you need 4 runs to win, you don't need to hit a 6. A 4 will also make you win. If you need a single, just run.
Sharma, I'm a wealth manager, and this is an interesting perspective because we're missing one key stakeholder, and that's the investor's perspective. What should a VC fund manager or a VC fund investor be thinking of this funding winter? It seems that over the last 3 or 6 months, on my table, a lot of proposals from VCs have come raising funds for venture capital and venture debt funds. And most of them, as a capital allocator, they don't seem to be very prudent. So this is mostly directed at Vani, Kola. What do you think about this?
A lot of people want to either be a VC themselves, hence raise a fund, or they want to be what's called an LP, which is really a way of saying they are investors in a VC fund. For example, an investor in our fund, right? Should they do that or not do that today? That I think is the question. VC funds are 10-year-long funds and they're highly, highly liquid funds. It's a very, very special class of, to say, is this the right fund manager? It's not that different than you putting money into a PMS fund or a mutual fund. What is the process you go through? Maybe the process is a little easier because you have enough literature. Secondly, maybe because it has published historical returns, then you can also make your decision that way. They're not that illiquid. You can get in, but you can get out. And more familiarity over time. But even then, you will research the fund manager, you will research their strategy. Is this something I want to do? And so, I think most people should not invest in VC funds because...
If I can clarify, capital allocator, or should I...
No, but the largest VC fund, like a tiger losing 50% value, but what about the smallest VC funds, which is where your clients are likely to be investing, have probably gained in value? We have distributed the highest amount of capital to our investors ever in the last 10 years, last year. But the question is not about losing the value, because the decision you make today and could be ready to bet or not, and within that it's not that simple, right? Are they investing into what kind of a venture fund? If it's a very experienced manager who has seen ups and downs, maybe that's fine. Maybe if you're investing in a Web3 fund, because every fund has a certain focus of what is it that they're going to invest in turn, right? So suppose it's a Web3 fund, or principle in investing, both personal or professional, I don't change my philosophy around it. I'm not greedy. Most of the time, you're doing emotional investing. Or maybe it will go up still, let me hold on to it. You don't want to sell it. And then, of course, everybody here has gone through this. Same thing, VCs also sometimes do that. Founders do that. They should sell their company, they got a great value. But certainly last year, investing was probably the wrong reason, because you're paying a high valuation. Today, we can only go up from here. At least that's the bet I am making, right? And all financial advice should be taken with a pinch of salt. But, I don't know, if you don't invest now, then into this, this is a very, very long road before you see any money coming back to you. So.
Thank you.
I think we'll have a make it short.
Quick. Is age of the founder a factor when you're investing as a VC? Direct question to you, Vani. Age of the founder.
The metaverse, some, Monkey Kong, NFT, maybe you and I don't relate to it, but you can build other kind of companies also. So I don't think age is a factor. And in fact, in your own mind, you should not let something be a factor that, you say, I'm building a valuable business, and it's for the investor who's smart, founder after 50, right? So if she can, why not you or me or anybody else? So I don't think age is a big factor, and I don't think VCs are, there's a lot of myths about VCs, but that they only look at young founders is one of those myths.
I'd like to click picture with the crowd, if you can stand there. And one picture here with you. Hello everyone, please stay back for a picture.